Welcome to Mama's Priceless Parties. Today I'm going to show you how to make a cake using the Betty Crocker box cake mix. It is delicious and super easy. So if you're new to baking or just don't have time to make it from scratch, then this video is for you. Now let's make a cake. I'm going to be using the Betty Crocker Super Moist French Vanilla Cake Mix. Now the first thing we need to do is preheat our oven to 325 degrees Fahrenheit. Now this is for a non-stick pan, which I highly recommend. It makes it super simple for the cake to come out. Now let's make the batter. We're going to empty the contents of the box mix into the mixing bowl. Then I'm going to add 1 cup of milk. Now I know it says on the back milk or water, but always use milk. Next, we're going to use 1/3 cup of vegetable oil and 3 eggs. Now with a hand mixer, I'm going to turn it onto low speed so that I can gently mix the ingredients and that the powder does not fly up. Then I'm going to turn the mixer onto medium speed and mix until fully combined. Now, if you don't have a hand mixer, you could use a whisk or even a fork, but you just have to beat it very fast and at least for about 2 minutes until you see that it is fully combined. Now we're going to prepare our baking pans. I'm going to be using 2 9-inch round baking pans that are non-stick. Now you can use 2 8-inch pans or 1 9x13 pan. Again, you want them to be non-stick, and we're going to grease them up. We're going to take some butter and we're going to move it around the bottom of the pan. Then we're going to go to the sides of the pan and you're going to move the butter so that you grease the whole pan. Now, next you want to make sure that you get that edge between the bottom of the pan and the side of the pan with your finger really well. You want the butter everywhere on that pan. Now, you'll notice that when you grease it, you'll actually see that kind of film, and then you know you fully greased your pans. Then you're going to do the same for the other pan if you have more than one. Once our pans are greased, we want to pour the batter into the baking pans. So half of the batter should go in the first pan and half in the second pan. Now it doesn't have to be exact, but we want to try and be as consistent as possible. So we're just going to eyeball it. So what I do here is I pour a little bit at a time. So I'm going to go in the center of my pans and I'm going to pour a bit into the first pan and then a bit into my second pan. Now I'm going to go back to my first pan and kind of top it up, and the same with the second pan. And it's easier to eyeball it when you're doing this because it's a bit at a time and you can see, okay, I actually need more batter in this pan than the other pan. Next, you're going to want to use all the batter that's in your bowl. So I like using a spatula and I push it against the bowl and it cleans all the batter up. It pulls it all up so I'm not wasting any batter. Now, if you want to find out the products and tools that I use, check out the description box below. Now I'm going to gently tap the baking pans on the table to remove any air bubbles. And then we're going to put them in the oven. Next, we need to put our timer on. So to determine the length of time, what we need to do is look at the back of the box. So you always want to pick the lowest of your range for your pan type. So in my case, I am using 2 9-inch round baking pans. I'm going to put my timer on for 22 minutes. Once the timer goes off, remove the pans and do the toothpick test. So insert a toothpick into the center of a cake, and if there is no crumbs, the cake is done. If there are crumbs, then you need to put it back in for at least a minute and then recheck with the toothpick. Once your cakes are done, you want to let them cool for 10 minutes in their pan. Once the 10 minutes is done, we're just going to remove the cakes from the baking pan. The easiest way to do this is to take your cooling rack, flip it upside down, and place it on top of the baking pan. Then, while holding the baking pan and the cooling rack, flip it right side up and then pull the pan off. It's as simple as that. Now we need to let the cakes cool completely before frosting them. Now, wasn't that easy? For more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to my channel and don't forget to click the bell for notifications. Now we're going to assemble the cake. So the first thing I'd like to do is to take a look at the layers. The first layer looks pretty level. However, the second layer looks a bit taller on the right than on the left side. So I do want to level that off. You don't have to do this step, and I never did for many years, but I do find now it does elevate the overall look of the cake. So the simplest way to do that is with a Wilton cake leveler. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the wire on the left up to the first notch, and then on the right to the first notch. Now you could use a long serrated knife for this, but you would just want to make sure it's level to the table. I'm going to place my hand on top of the cake just to hold it in place, and I'm going to go back and forth with the leveler. And as I'm doing this, the metal will cut the top of the cake. Then I'm just going to slide that leveler under again and pull the cake up and off. Now I do see a part that's still not fully level, so I'm just going to take another pass at this, and this is sometimes it will be done with one round, but sometimes you might need to go 1 or 2 times. Okay, that looks level, and I'm just going to remove any of the crumbs. Now I want to test the overall level when I put the layers together. So I'm just going to flip this layer upside down, take my second layer, flip it upside down and place it on top. And then I do see that it's totally level. I like how it looks. So now I'm going to put it to my platter. So I'm going to take my first layer, put it upside down on the platter. And now I want to put a filling between the layers. So I love using the St. Delphur raspberry fruit spread. It is naturally sweetened with fruit juice instead of sugar, so it's not super sweet and it adds just the right amount of moisture to this cake. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to put some fruit spread on the first layer and I'm going to spread it around. You do not want to go to the very edge of the layer. We're just going to make a circle that is just slightly smaller than that layer. Now we're going to take our second layer, turn it upside down, and we're going to place it on top of the first layer. We're going to push it together just to keep it and make sure it's centered. Next, we're going to use the Betty Crocker Creamy Deluxe French Vanilla Frosting. I'm going to take a dollop of icing and put it in the center of the cake. Then I'm going to take another dollop, and what we're going to do here is we're going to make a crumb coat. So it is a very thin layer that locks in the crumbs so that our final layer, we do not see any crumbs at all. We are gently going to spread the frosting on the top of the cake. If you need to hold the layer in place, just do that with your hand. When you're spreading this icing out, you always want to make sure that there is frosting between that spatula and the cake. Before going back to the can of frosting, you want to wipe off the spatula because there will be crumbs on that spatula and we don't want to put that into the can of frosting. Once we have the top of the cake done, we're going to move to the side of the cake. So you want to get a good dollop of icing and we're going to gently glide against the side of the cake, pulling the frosting with us. Again, you want to make sure there is frosting between the cake and the spatula. And we're just going to do this around the whole cake. Once the side of the cake is complete, we're going to clean off the icing spatula of any icing. And we're going to put it against the side and we're going to gently scrape the side of our cake to remove any excess frosting. So this is the crumb coat. We want it to be very thin and it just locks in those crumbs. We're going to do this around the whole side of the cake. And then when we're done, we're going to go to the top and we're going to use the bottom of the spatula and we're going to pull in the sides, which means we're going to go from the outside, pull the frosting in so that there are no edges. We are going to then scrape off any excess from the top of the cake. Once the crumb coat is done, we're just going to clean up any frosting that's on the cake board. So what I like to do is just use a butter knife and a paper towel and run that knife along the cake, cleaning up any frosting that's on the cake board. And just do that around the whole cake. This totally enhances the overall look of the cake when it's finished. Now I know the cake does not look pretty right now, but this is just the crumb coat, so not to worry. Now we're going to put the cake in the freezer for at least 20 minutes or until the crumb coat is dry. The way to check when the crumb coat is dry is to simply touch the cake, and if no icing comes up and it feels dry to the touch, then we're ready. Now you'll need to decide whether you want to pipe your cake or frost your cake. If you want to pipe your cake, click the link in the top right corner for instructions on how to decorate a beautiful rosette cake. For frosting your cake, I have a couple of imprint techniques to show you today that are so simple and will elevate the overall look of your cake. So we're going to start by applying a layer of frosting to the cake. So we're going to put frosting on the top of the cake and we're going to spread it out. You want to make sure that there is frosting between the spatula and the cake at all times. We're going to complete the whole top, and then we're going to move to the side. So get a dollop of icing, and we're going to apply it to the side in a gliding motion. And then we're going to get some more frosting, and we're going to continue around the whole side of the cake until it's complete. Next, you want to clean off the spatula, and we're just going to smooth out that side. So we're going to hold the spatula at an angle gently across the side, and we're not scraping the icing off, we're just gently gliding it along the side of the cake. And a little bit of icing might come off, but you should not be getting tons of icing off. This is just to smooth out the side. And then we're going to do this around the whole side of the cake. Now, when you're doing this, if you find that you've taken too much off by accident, that's okay. Just add a bit more icing back to the side of the cake and re-smooth out. Now we're going to smooth out the top of the cake, and if you see any spots where you need to add a bit more frosting, you can do that at any point in time. Next, we're going to pull in the edges, so gently with your spatula, we're going to go from the outside edge, pull the icing gently towards the center of the cake. It's okay if it doesn't look pretty. We're going to do an imprint on this, and so you don't have to make it perfect. Now for the first imprint technique, I'm going to show you lines. So you want to make sure that you have a clean spatula. We're going to gently imprint the cake, so I'm going to glide it from the front to the back. You will see that the icing is not really coming off on the spatula here. It is gently imprinting the cake. And we're going to do this to the whole top of the cake to give it a beautiful look. Next, I'm going to finish off by just smoothing out the top of that edge. And then our cake is done. Now I'm going to remove this design to show you the second technique, but also to show you that if you make a mistake with your first design, that you can simply add some icing and re-smooth out the top, and then you can start your design over again. For the next imprint technique, I'm going to use a spoon. So you want to warm it up in hot water and then dry it off. Next, we're going to start the design on the cake, and in a figure 8 motion, I am just going to move it around the cake to imprint the frosting. So you'll see that no frosting is coming off on the spoon. I am just simply moving it around and leaving an imprint on the cake. Now you could stop here and leave the design simply on the top and have a flat side, or you can actually move your design to the side and continue along that side until complete. No matter which imprint design you go with today, the last thing that you need to do is to clean up the cake board. So using a butter knife covered with paper towel, you're going to gently glide it against the cake board to remove any of the frosting, and this will give it a nice finished look. And look at that beautiful cake. I hope you enjoyed making this cake with me today and that your cake is absolutely priceless.